Thank you very much. Thank you again. We'd like to extend my heartfelt thanks to my brother Bishop Gregory for the kind words about me. I am not the one who deserves that lot of praise. And as he said, I am here with you to share with you some thoughts about our tragic situations, either in the Middle East as a whole or in Iraq or Syria. I would like to ask you to forgive me if I get too emotional. This is because I am not talking rhetorics or giving conference related to past history. In our Arabic language, we have say, the one who gets the sticks, the baton, is not like the one who counts them. Today, the survival of Christians, and most particularly our Syriac people, is at stake. We are completely devastated by the catastrophic events that occurred recently in the Middle East. My intention is to raise awareness of our plight. We, the Syriac Orthodox, Catholic, Chaldean, and Assyrian churches, who are considered the closest church communities to the biblical times, referring to Semitic language and heritage. We all, these churches, are present time in real danger of disappearing from our ancestral lands that go east of the Orontes River in Arabic Al-Asi in Syria to Mesopotamia in Iraq, which is, ironically, now the land conquered by the so-called ISIS, Daesh. I will tell you the truth also because I used to say direct thoughts to my listeners. I really don't like the acronym of ISIS, as it were a perfume for nice ladies. Latest horrible crimes in Palmyra, that old famous city, archaeological city, Aramaic civilization, as well the Roman, was well known as kind of razzia of those who did conquer it and destroy the some of its archaeological sites, like what they did with Nineveh nearby Mosul. And just a few weeks ago, they did invade the close to Palmyra small city of Qaryatain, and they did destroy our convent of Saint Elian, Mar Elian, which goes back to the 5th century. And the pastor, Father Jacques Mourad, and over 200 families are still taken hostages by those who want to fight in the name of Allah. I should be useful to state that situations of Christians somehow differs from Christians in Lebanon, for instance, or from Egypt, because what is going in Syria and Iraq, it's real religious cleansing. Christians are a target because they are Christians and they have no defense and no one who will really defend them and liberate their lands. Although we know that the central government of Iraq and the Peshmerga of Kurdistan, as well the coalition, they tell us they're doing their best. Pope Francis, who will be coming soon to visit the States, during his July apostolic visit to Bolivia, deplored the genocide of Christians. And you remember on April 12, he stated very clearly that what did happen in that massacre of Armenians, Syriac, Chaldeans, as well other Christian communities back in the Ottoman Empire was the first genocide of the 20th century. And now our Syriac churches, along with the Chaldeans and Assyrian, are facing the first genocide of the 21st century. Pope Francis said when he declared the beatification of one of our martyrs, Bishop Flavianus Michael Malke, who was killed in Gizre, present Turkey, 100 years ago, he said that even today, in the Middle East and other parts of the world, Christians are persecuted. There are more martyrs than there were in the first centuries. At the description of the tragic situation of Christians in the Middle East, we often hear this spontaneous question prompted by our very much concerned friends, of course, either in the States or other parts of the world in Europe. What we can do for you Christians? I think it is time to tell them, and you, my friends, the full truth. The very survival of Christians and all non-Muslim minorities in the Middle East, if Daesh not completely defeated, will be in great danger of disappearing. And it is time to wake up and look at the roots of the terrorism that claims legacy on a religion and began threatening the very achievement of the modern civilization based on Judeo-Christian values. Feelings of compassion, although needed and much appreciated, are simply not enough. We pray, we give money, but we feel helpless to show them our support. A good Catholic French woman wrote, the lady La Doucette, who on the Assumption Day, last Assumption Day, she asked all dioceses in France and neighboring countries to ring the bells for the cause of the Christians in the Middle East. She was a woman. It's quite dangerous to keep silent and ignore the recent rising of political Islam, not only in the Middle East, but also in many other regions around the world. I therefore will try to analyze this devastating plight engulfing our peoples, either in Iraq or Syria, where sectarian civil wars have raged for a long time. Just a few words about what I was told 3 years ago in Geneva by some of our brother bishops and prelates at the World Council of Churches in Geneva. That was in January 2012. They told me, yes, or told us, the attendants, our governors, our rulers, our politicians made a wrong lecture of what is happening now in the Middle East. They have portrayed the horrible bloody conflicts occurring in recent years in several Middle Eastern countries as a popular upheaval of enchanting promise, the Arab Spring. 12 years after the Allied invasion of Iraq, the situation that evolved there became much worse. 4.5 years of horrendous sectarian war in Syria only proved that the political stand of Western countries was totally based on a wrong lecture, wrong reading. We heard this very often and in countless of time. The media is called the fourth power, as you know. I had the joy to meet some of the journalists, and I applaud them for their good work. However, the media becomes the superpower if it keeps insidiously manipulating the public opinion, such an invading agglomerate media. Let us consider the hammering news regarding the so-called Arab Spring. Has anyone enjoyed a spring going to the much tormented countries in today's Middle East and North Africa? Politicians in the US and Europe must stand up without any reservation or condition for human rights as promulgated by the United Nations Charter of Human Rights of 1948. In our day, the freedom of religion, of conscience, and the right to choose his or her religious belief as stipulated in that charter is crucial for the survival of Christians in the land of Islam. Every thinker, political or religious leader has to recognize that this very issue is the main problem in countries where political Islam intends to rule, mingling religion and politics, in countries where Muslims make the majority of the citizens. As you may know, Lebanon is the only Middle Eastern country and of Arab region where the constitutions recognizes the right for all citizens to be equal. It is useful to remember that only in Lebanon, this tiny nation that welcomed over 2 million of refugees, almost the half of the whole population, one can keep or change freely his or her religion when getting married to a spouse of a different belief. In other Middle Eastern countries, as you may know, a non-Muslim man must convert to Islam and register his children as Muslims when married with a Muslim woman. Needless to say that abiding by the Charter of the Human Rights is a condition sine qua for the very survival of Christians in the Middle East. We therefore expect the nations having a say on the international scene should earnestly help us and all non-Muslim minorities to remain rooted in their own country without being looked at as dhimmis. That means the people of the book under the protections of the people of the Quran, who rather must beg a permission to live in their own land. This is the logic of consequence of the constitution in the Middle East to keep an amalgam between religion and politics, or church and state. Jesus told us very clearly, give what is Caesar's to Caesar and what is God's to God. And also Muslims say that there is no coercion in the religion. However, the understanding is different. The admonition of Jesus is not to mix religion with law and politics. It is an admonition already practiced in your country, your nation here, the United States, and in today's civilized nations. On the contrary, it happened to be denied ferociously and aggressively by most of the Muslim states because they want to impose and dictate their belief on others when are the majority of the citizens. Believe me, what I am saying is the reality. It's sad reality. I have nothing to do with Islamophobia. Islamophobia is the fear of Islam. It's a kind of natural feeling, but this is the plain truth. Christians, they need you to support their rights to be free, practicing their religion and in conscience. I can, for instance, quote Tawfiq Hamid, a doctor, Islamic Egyptian scholar living in the States, who said, Islam should prove its peacefulness. He called upon Islamic scholars and clerics to produce a Sharia that will be accepted in the Islamic world and that teaches that Jews are not pigs and monkeys, that declaring war to spread Islam is unacceptable, and that killing apostates is a crime. Wall Street Journal article 2009. In modern times, Christians of the Middle East have felt a kind of abandon, if not betrayal, from their brethren in the West. They cannot understand how Western countries, based on human rights, principles, and values, would pander to the most retrograde systems of government and go along with concepts of linking religion to every aspect of public life. In the past few decades, Western governments seem to hasten to sympathize with socio-political groups clearly tagged with Islam and promoting an aggressive agenda to implement their religion in their ideology. Let us consider, for instance, the Muslim Brotherhood, Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimun, this political denomination organization that was founded 90 years ago in Egypt by Hassan al-Banna. Otherwise, how would a system of government based on democratic principles sympathize with the very clear agenda of political Islam as professed in the Muslim Brotherhood? And we remember that members of that organization, the followers of Muslim Brotherhood, were claiming to be harassed and persecuted in some of Arab countries like Egypt, Syria, Iraq, Algeria, and they have been welcomed in the Western countries as refugees for political reasons. Let's say what is said in their motto: Allah is our objective, the Prophet is our leader, the Quran is our law, jihad is our way. Dying in the way of Allah is our highest hope. Allahu Akbar. This is the motto of the Muslim Brotherhood. Also, it is in the nature of Islam to dominate, not to be dominated, to impose its law on all nations and to extend its power to the entire planet. They are not my words, they are the words of the founder of Muslim Brotherhood, Hassan al-Banna. Have we ever thought that granting members of such an organization will be tolerating a mingling of religion and politics, and simply to admit an ideology that fight to dominate? And what is the difference between this organization and the dark banners of Daesh, of Jabhat al-Nusra, and other organizations that prone their religion to kill, abuse, kidnap, and imposed the jizya. What to do? On June 29th, the Islamists proclaimed a caliphate, June 29th of 2014, a caliphate, a worldwide Islamic state led by Amir al-Mu'mineen, the Prince of the Faithful, a religious and secular leader. What was chosen, or what we call named al-Baghdadi. They already captured under the eyes of the world vast territories, including the city and provinces of Mosul, Tikrit in Iraq, Raqqa, Deir ez-Zor, Idlib, Palmyra, northeast and central Syria. In the latter country, they keep threatening wider regions like Aleppo, the second largest city in Syria, where we have had a large concentration of Christians since centuries ago. And now it's a town that's besieged, and there is no way to get in and out, but in just a ground way. There is no other way to go in and out. The whole world knew that the so-called caliphate was orchestrated by highly organized groups, well-financed by many countries around the region. On October 2014, American Vice President Joe Biden, speaking at the John Kennedy Jr. Forum at Harvard University's Institute of Politics, said, "The Turks, the Saudis, the Emiratis poured hundreds of millions of dollars and thousands of tons of weapons into anyone who would fight against Assad, except that the people who were being supplied were al-Nusra and al-Qaeda and the extremist elements of jihadis coming from other parts of the world." Some are tempted to make the assertion that among the many victims of those terrorist takfirists are a large number of Muslims, our brother Muslims. Yes, there were 1,000 and more Muslim victims than, for instance, Christians. But remember, we Christians, the other minorities like the Yazidis or Shabak, we are tiny community in a vast sea of Muslim, either Sunnis or Shia. Now, as you well know, we don't have neither 1% of Christians remaining in Iraq. And those Christians in Syria, there was at once 10 to 12%. Now they are telling us there are less than half of them left. This is a reality because we are the most vulnerable segment of the population. We have no ambition of implementing a political agenda, no militias to fight against others, or even to defend ourselves in a region that we may call our own, to protect the voiceless and defenseless in the region. We need a strong, courageous intervention. The family of nations, particularly the Western governments, can do a lot more to destroy those terrorists and prevent those barbaric hordes from spreading all over the globe. We do not have the oil. We do not have the numbers, as they say. We have the Ummah, the Islamic nation, and we don't represent any threat to the nations of the Western sphere as others do. And therefore, we have been abandoned. I can say also, we have been betrayed. My appeal to the consciences of the Western leaders and the media: it is time you stand up for freedom, especially religious freedom of Christians and all minorities fighting for survival in their home countries. This could be done by stopping the flow of arms to jihadist groups in Syria and Iraq, putting an end to sending weapons to the so-called moderate opposition groups fighting governments in both countries. President Obama a year ago confessed that moderate opposition in Syria is simply a fantasy. Likewise, it is most urgent to stop channeling the funds to those terrorist hordes by fanatics and radicals among Sunni and Wahhabite of the Gulf state, mainly Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the Gulf Emirate, and Turkey. It's quite understood because of fear of collateral damages, killing civilians. Airstrikes are not enough. They are not efficient to defeat the so-called ISIS. Therefore, supporting national armies in Iraq and Syria is much needed to do the job. Demanding that the UN Security Council to adopt a binding resolution that ensures, after the liberation of conquered region by the Islamic State and companies, an immediate and return to all those who have been forced to flee their homes and properties, and to secure a safe haven in the plain of Nineveh. And I take the opportunity here to thank the government of Kurdistan for its hospitality given to all refugees, either Christians, Shabak, Yazidi, Sunni Muslims, Sunni Shia, since the month of June 2014. And we have here deputies representing the parliament. I would like to extend to the President Barzani, his government, and his people my heartfelt thanks. Surely, Jesus told us, man lives not only of bread, but of all word coming from God, from the mouth of God. But our people are really in very dire conditions as for their lodging, their medical care, for the education of their children. And we know that 2/3 of Christians, they fled Mosul and the plain of Nineveh. They still live in Kurdistan. 1/3 of them, they already fled to Lebanon, Jordan, and Turkey. And we try to do our best to help them. And therefore, the family of nations have the duty to go and help, not because they have privileges, but because they have been abandoned and deprived of all their rights and their ownership. As of Syria, there is no other alternative than to launch a serious process of a political solution by calling to national reconciliation with a dialogue among Syrians themselves, to make necessary amendment to the constitution with the aim to implement a truly civil government, multi-party system, and hold as soon as possible elections under the UN umbrella. As a conclusion, on this day of the 14th anniversary of the horrible massacre attacks of September 11, I will raise my fervent prayers, as my brother Bishop Gregory did for the victims and their families, as well for the United States of America, a nation so proven by terror. To have justice truly done to the innocent victims, should we not remind where did those terrorists come from and how they were educated to single others and kill them? Thank you.